What does it mean to master the game of life? Like any game, it requires a fundamental understanding and application of the rules. But living in today's on-demand society is making this nearly impossible as our attention is increasingly being fought over and monetized by others. Will Moore's mission is to help you hit the reset button by providing a new set of game rules based on time-proven universal principles and modern science. To gamify your life by making it fun and addictive to replace your habits in the 5 core areas of your life proven to lead to true happiness. Ready, player one?
All right. Well,
How are ya?
yes, I'm doing well. I'm so sorry. I'm not that much of a Instagram user, so it took me a little while. Took me a little while to get in, but I'm glad that we are in now.
We got it. Glad we're live. So why don't you tell us about your program, what you're doing, and then get into a little bit of a background. Tell us kind of what it is and what the goals are for it, and then we'll get into a little bit of background about it and you.
All right. So Shaunak Roy, I'm the founder and CEO of Yellowdig. It's a learning experience platform for colleges and universities, K-12, corporate training. And what we essentially do is to make learning more engaging and fun. So imagine if you're in a class, if you have kids, I don't know, they go to school or colleges, typical experience is not that fun. I mean, a lot of students actually don't stick around for too long. Dropout rates are very high. Sometimes we blame them on the students themselves, saying that they don't have motivation or whatnot. But, I think it's time for us to also look at how we can improve the overall experience of, learning essentially using technology. So that's what we do as a company.
Love it. Right. I mean, this is exactly right up my alley, as I was just saying kind of briefly. I use the term gamification, but it's basically what you just said, using technology, what we know about behavioral science, principles, things to sort of take to make it fun, engaging, interesting, anything to reduce the friction to help people to grow. And obviously learning is everything. ABG, if you're not growing, you're dying. And a big part of ABG is learning. And the educational system, the way it's set up, it's been in place for so long. I've done lots of posts and stuff about this, and the fact that, we're basically using a system that was created over 100 years ago when it was like a factory type environment. And, you put the kids through the school and they learn these skills, and then they go into the factories, and then it became, you would get your skill set and go have a job for the rest of your life and work for somebody. And as long as you had a good degree and all that, none of that applies anymore. It's just, It's all the wild, wild west now. It's a free for all. And the entrepreneur, it's the age of the entrepreneur, the independent contractor, and paying $50,000-$60,000 for college just doesn't make sense anymore. I mean, we see all this stuff going on in Congress with the fighting between, forgiving student debt and all these things. So love it. Love what you're doing. Kudos to you. When did you found the company? How long ago?
So it's been 7 years. I founded in 2015. Prior to that, I had a regular job in a company. So I kind of went through my, very quickly. I grew up in India, did my undergrad in engineering and mechanical engineering in India. So, kind of got my first experience with undergrad. It was a really good school, though. I really enjoyed that experience, but I also realized that it wasn't optimal. I kind of survived because, I was always very curious myself in terms of learning new things, and I kind of enjoyed that experience. I came to the US after that, did my master's, and then took a job, that I did for almost a decade. And then I probably mid-career, I found my true calling to start a company that kind of merges. My passion is, technology. I love to build digital products. And also I love to see how people learn. So I kind of merged those two passions to build this company.
Very cool. So tell us a little bit more about the program itself and what it does. So Just give us a typical user that would sign up for it and how it helps them and how it's different from the typical process that person might go through of education.
Yeah, so typical experience, like imagine you're in a classroom, and which is kind of, K-12 or higher education or corporate training. So typical experience is that you sit in a classroom, you probably go, once or twice a week. An instructor will come and teach you for like 45 minutes. Then you have to do some assignments by the end of the week, and you submit that. And what really happens in that experience is mostly passive, where you're kind of, you're required to get excited about what you're learning. Could be any topic that you may or may not be excited about. And then you have to almost check the boxes to kind of do the bare minimum to get a passing grade.
Right.
And vast majority of education is exactly like that, right? So, students by nature themselves won't get excited about a topic unless they truly understand why they should be excited about. And, people do the bare basics to kind of get through. So that's the typical experience. So not exciting, not fun. It's a process. It's a chore for most people.
Right.
And you do it, you lose your money, all the investments that you've made, and you're also not going to get a job or career, whatever you want out of it. So, and which is what's happening. I mean, 1/3 of the students who start in undergrad in the US now do not complete their degrees even after 6 years. So there's a lot of wastage in the system from a tuition standpoint, from people wasting a lot of time and not really getting the value.
Well,
so what we do,
I didn't realize it was that high. 1/3.
Yeah, it's almost 1/3 who's going to finish right now.
Wow.
And numbers are actually increasing because the engagement levels in online courses and programs are even lower, because what used to be in a physical classroom where the teacher could actually excite you if they are a good teacher, but especially online in a Zoom room, it's not, even worse. So that's the current status of primarily majority of education. So the platform that we have built is what we call is connected learning or social learning or community-based learning. So what happens in Yellowdig is, as soon as you start a course or a program, you're put into a community of learners. And you're almost like exploring a topic together. If you're excited about it, you can explore yourself. But what happens in a community is that people who are taking the same class with you might have different experiences, different interests, different point of views. So we kind of bring that together very quickly into the learning environment, and we gamify that experience. So part of the problem we solve is that, if you have a community, it doesn't mean that you're going to engage. If you look at Facebook, Twitter, these platforms, a very small portion of the users are actually creating content. But in education, we would like everybody to engage. So we solve that problem by creating incentives for the learners to talk to one another, essentially. So we use behavior theories, a lot of game-based principles to essentially incentivize the students to kind of share their experiences, like who they are, why they're excited about this topic.
Yes. Tell me, sorry to interrupt. Tell me a few of these. I love that. What are some of these incentives that they're getting?
Yeah, so essentially, so for example, if you post something, you get points for that. And if somebody comments on your post, you get points for that as well. And if somebody reacts to that comment, as well as if the instructor gives you a badge or some sort of accolade that kind of shows that it's a high quality contribution, you get points for that. And these points counts towards participation. So, traditionally, if you're in a classroom, you have to raise your hand and say something, right? That's how participation would work. And that's how teachers know that you are actually engaging. But in this modern world, like, people are rarely raising their hands, or especially online, it's very hard to do. Imagine in a Zoom room with like 50 students, like raising your hand is a lot of pressure for a lot of people.
Right.
So we actually create these incentives for you to participate, but it doesn't have to be the classroom time. You can participate like at your own time. And these points count towards your participation grade. So every class is a participation grade, and this is how kind of it goes towards that.
I love that. I love it. Good for you. That's a really great, it's funny. So I'm trying to build something similar. We need to have a conversation about this afterward. Actually, you know what? Let's have it now.
Sure.
So I'm building something, doing very similar, using some of these same behavioral science gamification techniques. I see you're using social connectivity, rewards, points. maybe even a little competition in there. Like, oh, wow, does it show what everybody's points are? So you can be like, oh, I want to get ahead of that other person. Yeah. All that stuff's great. So I'm building something called, well, name to be determined, but it's basically, the working name right now is Momentapedia. It's essentially sharing. I'm taking universal principles. Like, I'm trying to gather every universal principle I've been able to find. Not an easy task, by the way, because there's not a zillion universal principles. And when I say universal principle, by the way, I mean something that has been around since the beginning of man. It's going to be around until we destroy ourselves. And it's proven itself through the test of time. And it's these things that I consider, that I've either read like 100, I've read so many self-help books and lectures and all the, and podcasts. And so if I've heard it like a bunch of times in different ways, and then I've seen it in my own life to be true, I'm like, okay, I can hang my hat on this one, right? And then to me, that's kind of the key, is becoming aware of what these are, and then it's building your habits around them. And so to me, it's combining these universal principles with habits, and then gamifying the process to basically using behavioral science technology to make it easy, fun, using stuff like rewards points to want to actually discover what these are and then implement them in your lives. And so Momentapedia is going to be like the idea is you can click on your 5 core areas. That's your mindset, your relationships, your career and finance, your physical health, or your emotional health. These are the main areas of our lives that scientifically have proven to make us happy, as long as we keep growing and finding balance in them. And you start to identify, okay, what are my issues? Where do I stand in each of these? Now, and what are the failure habits that I've developed that are hurting me every single day? And then what's that universal principle that I'm missing, that I'm not following? And then what is the success habit that I can then replace it with? And so I'm building this, and I'm actually having a hard time trying to figure out the right software and how to do it. So yeah, we should definitely talk more after this about potentially working together. I want to see, I need to see your layout and structure. Is the way what I just described something that could potentially fit into your system, or would that not work?
Firstly, what you're building, it sounds very, very interesting, and then I would say very cool, because there are so many principles that we all kind of come across in life. We forget it, and also how do we take action on it?
Sorry, we're losing your audio.
Can you hear me now?
Now I can. Yeah, it got covered for a second. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, so what I was saying is that, what I love about your idea is that, there are so many rules, or what you call it, universal habits, that we kind of know about, because everybody's kind of reading various books. But is there one place which is almost like a kind of I would like a Wikipedia kind of a thing, like, hey, these are all these habits that people find useful. And it sounds like you also want to create an incentive for people to take action on them, right? So
people would contribute. That's exactly right. So we would put we would start it off with a lot of the main ones, and then people can contribute, and they would get points and rewards and these types of things for contributing their own habits. And so here's the key with this. This is everything. Listen up, people, and listen good. A universal principle is a universal principle, but how every individual enacts that principle in their life is 100% unique and different. And I think the problem up until now with every self-help speaker, book, lecture system that people have tried to use is, a lot of times, the majority of the time, they make it where it's like a one size fits all. Like, this is what you need to do, right? Wake up early. Like, I've been reading in books for years. You need to wake up well, no, I tried that. It goes against every bit of my DNA, my personality. I'm a night owl. I'm not good in the morning. I'm great late at night. So, it took me a while, but I realized, no, like, I can be actually productive up until 11 o'clock at night when my wife is sleeping, because she's the opposite. So you've got to customize it to your own DNA, your own personality. So for instance, and that's what I'm excited about, incentivizing people to share, is how they've done it. So let's say you have the habit of, let's just take any habit for relationship core, looking people looking people in the eyes. Here's a better example of working out. You know, we all know physical health core. Everybody knows you need to exercise, but how you exercise, like how you actually get your body moving, can be completely different across every single human. And sometimes we get caught up in like, oh, I don't have time to go to the gym. I hate running. I can't do this, right? And then you just don't do it. And you take the low-hanging fruit, which is I'll just click the TV and, you know, eat cookies. So, but if you realize like, well, wait a minute, I love playing basketball. Like for me, I love basketball. I love tennis. I love like most sports. So I proactively realized I'm not going to go for a run. My wife, again, opposite. She loves running. That's her thing. She just went for a run this morning. To me, that's like torture. But I found my golden habit by finding the things that I really enjoy. And then not only does it not feel like work, but I love it. Like last night I had a paddle match and it was so fun. I didn't even feel like I was exercising because of the competition. You get all caught up in it. And so the key is, to me, finding those things for you and then sharing them on this platform where other people can go, oh, wow, I hadn't even thought of that. That's me. Now I can do that. And then you sort of form these little communities and groups and tribes, and you sort of help encourage and spur each other along with the habits that you're working on.
Yeah, and you know, one thing that you kind of said is that this whole motivation piece, right? Because what's the real motivation for somebody to take action, which is going to be different for everybody, right? So that is a very, you know, one of the principles, I mean, you must be aware of this, is in game design that people have found there are three things actually that matter to create the motivation for people to take action, right? That's the key thing that you're talking about. The first is agency, which is having the freedom to choose, right? So if somebody's saying, okay, these are the 10 things that you have to do, as you're saying, I may not want to do that because I am a very different person than you probably, right? Because, you know, as you see, your wife and you are quite different. So the agency is such an important thing. So even though there are 10 principles that truly work, but I, as a user or of the system, should have an agency to choose what I want to do, as opposed to not choose and be told that you have to do those 10 things. I think that, you know, having the agency drives motivation, so that I'm more motivated to actually do it because I feel that it's for me, as opposed to somebody said that this is something that needs to be done. The other two things, very quickly, just to put it out there, one is agency. The other is what is sales called the connectedness, which is, you know, if there is a feeling in this kind of a system that the users are connected to one another in some sense, there's an emotional connection. Just like game, right? People like to, you know, play games with other people. Right. Even if there's a game with AI, it's not going to be interesting after a while. But if there are other human beings who are playing the game with you, you feel like more real. You're actually having a real thing as opposed to something fake. Is so important. So that connectedness is so important in these kind of systems. And the final thing is mastery, which is there got to be something where there are rewards associated. Like if I take like 5 minutes, 10 minutes of my day's time to spend in this system, I need to feel that I'm learning and I'm actually bettering myself. Like there's a sense of mastery. I'm like learning something new, which is rewarding, to motivate myself so that I want to come back tomorrow and do the same thing. So, you know, these are the three principles that I've seen that work quite well, and that could be as a community, which is what we do, or there may be other ways of designing the system. This kind of does these three things.
I love it. I love it. I mean, that's it. That's it. And, you know, I love what you're doing and how you're right. You're understanding. Again, this is using behavioral science. This is stuff we've learned that really not many people are using other than the big companies like Facebook and Google, and right, because they've learned how to manipulate us and to use what they know will motivate us and to get us. We're like little mice on the wheel. They're like, oh, we can get their dopamine hit by having them scroll and getting an unexpected surprise, or by getting points, or by, you know, the social connectivity. And, you know, they use all that and they're monetizing our attention. Again, I'm not like this big, like every big company's bad. I mean, they're businesses. It's not even their fault. Like they're trapped, literally. Like they have to please their shareholders. Like they don't have a choice. And so they have to show growth. And how do you show growth? You have to, all of a sudden, that's why the system's broken. It's like, figure out, okay, well, even if it's hurting people's happiness and their momentum in life and they're achieving their goals, we're making money. right? And that's what we're talking about here, is kind of, for lack of a better term, using it all for good versus evil.
That's exactly right. I mean, that's the beautiful way of putting it. I think everything is out there. All this research has been out there for a long time. People know how to build this technology for a long time. It's just a matter of the application, which is a little more making people happy and more productive. I don't know whether it'll make as much money as Facebook or Google, because that may not be as big of a business. Who knows what? I mean, it might be, but I think there's money to be made there. I mean, we are trying to do it.
Yeah.
So.
For sure. Well, and I mean, it's to me, again, it's you got to have companies like yours and that are out there trying to kind of shift the what do you want to call it, the script that's been in place for so long, and sort of say, okay, what about looking at it this way? And I think it's going to happen, because at the end of the day, results speak for themselves. And I think when people are having fun and enjoying and are engaged and are excited to actually go on because they're getting little dopamine hits from, oh wow, I got points, oh I got a badge from my professor saying that that was a good contribution. I mean, those are the same types of dopamine hits that we're getting from these other platforms. And so, right, it's just a matter of getting it to the point where it's working and people want to me, I always use that term, want to versus have to, right? It's like, I think a lot of people think of school as, I got to go to school. Well, what if it was, oh, I get to go to school, or I get to go on and learn, and that's everything, right? That's the shift.
That's exactly right. I mean, that's a wonderful way of putting it. I mean, the behavior is already there. I mean, kids are already on TikTok and they're glued to it. I have 2 daughters and they are on TikTok and every social media. And, I always wonder, I mean, I think they're also learning things from there. I think it's a matter of like using some of these technologies to a little more intentionally, so that we know that they are learning, as opposed to we are guessing if they're learning or not.
You're right.
That
Edutainment, it's and it is, and that's so I'm on. So I haven't cracked the code yet. So I mean, I'm on social media here with you now, and some of my posts do well, some not so well. I'm trying to but I'm constantly looking at, okay, like how am I able to educate my followers or my players? Because life's a game, right? We're just trying to score points and win it. How can I educate them in a way that is fun and doesn't seem like the tips that I'm giving them are overwhelming to help them move the needle and make their lives better, but kind of like, oh yeah, I could do that, right? And I don't know if you've read any of these habit books like BJ Fogg, Tiny Habits, Atomic Habits by James Clear. Have you read any of those books?
I do follow some of the podcasters in this space who are like big on self-help and self-improvement, right, like Tim Ferriss and others.
Yeah, Tim Ferriss is a good one.
They've done like wonderful things in this area, and I'm implementing some of them. But to your point, I kind of went in the beginning to kind of really do a bunch of things, and I realized that I just can't do it because I'm not that person. Like, I'm not that athletic, but I can force myself to do half an hour exercise every morning. So I forced myself doing that, and I've done that for a couple of years now, and I do see the benefits of that. But I'm keeping it to that limit. So now I'm trying to find out, okay, what else is out there which I'm enjoying, but at the same time is improving me.
So let me just walk through a quick little example of how some of the main techniques that I use, and maybe can help you and the listeners to help get over that hump. So here's the thing: habits, they don't care whether they're good or bad, helping or hurting us. I mean, they're going to do their thing. They are going to compound over time, and they are going to create who we are as individuals. Whether, so for instance, if you don't brush your teeth, it's not going to really you're not going to notice when you're a kid. You start to get a little older. Oh, that kid's, he's 16 and his teeth are a little brown. By 25, your teeth are falling out, right? Or I should say even sooner if you don't brush your teeth at all, but depending on how much you brush your teeth. But if you floss every day and you brush and and same with exercise, same with, how you handle your relationships, same with your career and your, like, so there's just it all comes down to habits. And to me, and what some of these books talk about is gamifying is my term, but basically reducing the friction by tricking your little dog brain into wanting to take these actions. And again, it alludes to some of the stuff I was saying earlier, like with sports, where it's like you mentioned the term you force yourself. Like, you don't have to force yourself. There's ways, I promise you, the way that you are built as an individual, your personality, your DNA, you'll be able to find an exercise that, yeah, maybe at first it doesn't, you're not like, this is amazing, but you want to find, and again, I call it, it's actually a term from BJ Fogg. They're called golden habits. They're the habits that are the most reduced, the friction's reduced the most because you already have an acclimation for doing them. So again, you know, you said you force yourself. I think you said push-ups. Like maybe you find something else if you really hate that, or maybe you've already gotten over the hump and you've already developed that habit. So that's the other thing about habits, right? What the cool thing is, once you do get over that, what I call front-loaded hump, and once you kind of, because they've dug themselves in deep, these bad habits, and then once you sort of are able to fake it till you make it, you know, whatever technique you use, gamifying the habit to start to switch it to the good one. Once that one's formed, then you're on autopilot, and then it's like you don't have to think about it anymore. And that's the really cool thing about habits, right? So then it's like all of a sudden you start replacing these bad habits with these good habits in each of these areas of your life, and you start to build this momentum, and you start kind of replacing. And the way I like to do it, I look at my entire life. I mean, awareness is the very first thing you have to do. So I tell people, you know, track your habits for a week or so and just see everything that you're doing. You're not just your habits, but your entire routine for the day, because it's amazing. We do a lot of things we don't realize that we're doing. We think we know what we do every day, and the thoughts we have and the actions we take, but we really don't. For the most part. And so you start to kind of break those down and say, okay, what am I doing here that's really hurting me? Now, how do I reduce the friction to take I've identified this habit's bad. I want to form this one. I want to go to A to Z. You can't just start doing Z. This is the key. You have to do B first, and then C, and then D, and then it starts to compound, and then you get to Z. And you got to start small. So James Clear he says basically there's four things. You make it obvious, you make it easy, you make it rewarding, and you make it satisfying. Like, you can use those four different ways to reduce the friction. So for instance, obvious would be, if you want to form a habit, you make it super obvious. You put it in your peripheral. Like, you want to work out, you know, or, you know, you want to go to the gym, you put a reminder in your phone, is just an easy example, or you put your gym shoes right by the door, you know, on your way out, so you see them. If you want to not snack on cookies and Doritos at 12 o'clock midnight, you replace them with something else that you do want to snack on, like mixed nuts and these types of things. And at first they may not taste quite as good, and you're like, this isn't the cookie. But if that's all that's there, and that's what's obvious, and that's what's right in front of you, you're going to do it. And then what ends up happening is you actually start, again, you break that front-loaded hump, and you start to form that habit. And before you know it, now you're just kind of addicted to eating nuts. And really, it was the addiction of the late-night snacking. And now you've replaced that bad habit with a good habit that's compounding, and you're helping yourself versus hurting yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, look, this exactly makes sense. I think the one that you said, one of the things I had a bad habit about eating, like, I'm a big foodie and I love to eat a variety of things. And one of my problems was that I was buying those things I should not be eating. So the habit I had to change is not to even buy them. The other thing I do is that, one thing I realized, that never go shopping when you're hungry.
Right.
Always eat something, and when you buy some stuff, like, you're probably going to buy healthy stuff. You're not going to crave things that you really want to eat.
Right.
So a couple of things have changed there. I mean, I'm seeing some impact, for sure. And, one thing as you were speaking, I was thinking is, one of the challenges we have, and we have a bad habit, or humans have, to get to put the effort to go to the good side of it and see the results, is to visualize. Sometimes it's hard to visualize, like, what it might be if just doing this one thing for like 6 months. If there are ways, if there's a tool that maybe you're building where people can easily visualize that if I did it for 6 months, this principle, if I followed, I'm going to be a better human this way or that way. My relationships are going to be better this way. And this is an example of that. Those things could be helpful as well, because I definitely struggled visualizing that in the past, but now definitely if I see results, it's easier to do that. But for a lot of people, it's hard.
Yeah, and so I don't know if you're familiar. I'm working on an app that does exactly that. So this app is gamifying the whole thing using rewards points. You're this rocket, just like this one here in the background. You've got got your 5 cores of your life. You can't really see it, but it's your mindset, your relationships, your career and finance, your physical health, your emotional health, and each one of these is basically represents you. And you start on the ground, and in order to break Earth's gravitational pull, you have to slowly but surely start replacing your failure habits with success habits in each of these core areas. And as you do, the liquid, the momentum juice, I call it, in each one starts to fill up, and you go to your first planet. And then as you start to change these habits, you get to the next planet, and then there's asteroid fields that you're fighting through. There's aliens you're meeting that are giving you universal principles. You're flying off to new galaxies, and you can actually see your progress. And it's like, you know that as you're leveling up on screen, you're leveling up on life. And so that's the same concept like you're talking about. And it's amazing to me that nobody's really doing that, because there's a lot of habit apps out there, but to me they all feel like homework, to be honest with you. I've tried them all because I'm in researching what I'm doing. And I've been working on this app for about 4 years now. It was supposed to be a 6-month project, but this is my 3rd app I've built. This is how it goes. But I'm really trying to use all these things, and Momentopedia is going to be part of this app. But these points and rewards and social connectivity and competition, like you can see where you stand. You can start upgrading your ship. Like you start off with just a basic ship, and as you start to progress, you can upgrade your thrusters and your wings and the armor on your ship and stuff, so you become like this unstoppable force. And you can compare it to other people and how they're doing, and there's a leaderboard. And so to me, like the key and the big difference in changing habits, it's so hard for people, especially these days, because there's a million things distracting us, more so than we ever have had in the history of the world. We've got our phones, we've got our tablets, we've got our laptops, we've got our TV that has 18 different streaming services, right? And we're constantly being bombarded by ads and all these things. It's very hard to hold yourself accountable and to have discipline to do that. And so what I'm trying to do with this app, similar to what we were talking about earlier, is to use this whole addictive dopamine hits and this technology and behavioral science to get people to want to hold themselves accountable, where it's fun to start changing their habits, versus going down the rabbit hole and just scrolling on social media and comparing yourself to others, which just led to a lot of bad things, including teen suicide being at an all-time high.
Right.
You mentioned you have girls looking at TikTok and stuff.
When you launch this app, I mean, one idea for you is to actually go to colleges, universities, even high schools, and probably promote this as some sort of a course. Because, one of the challenges I feel is, changing habits early is better. Like, why go through your, teens and 20s and 30s and then realize in your 40s that, life could have been better. So it's easier to kind of go and early in your life and probably build some good habits, especially when you're in college. Why is not there a course in college that you have to go through? It's almost like Habits 101, where you learn about, how to live a good life, along with your how to speak well, write well, do good math, and all these things which are important, like just have the basic life skills.
How to be happy, right?
How to be happy.
I mean, that's it right there. The educational system, that's not prioritized. How to be happy, right? And to me, it goes to these, and it's understanding what you're doing in each of these, and how you're continually growing. And that's the thing. You're never going to get. I got depressed at one point when I realized that there is no finish line, because I remember thinking like, damn, like, so even if I get to where I'm going, then I got to keep working. But no, if you look at it, you got to change your mindset to realize that's what's awesome, right? So if you you want to set goals, and if you hit your goal, then you set another one. Again, there's always a way to continue to grow. And if you're not growing, again, that's just part of as humans, if we are not growing in some way, and again, and I feel like it's in this is my thing, but these main areas of our life, you can't just be growing in your career and finance and ignoring your relationships and your physical health and your emotional, right? You got to be growing in all of these areas. So that's the idea, is just helping people to do that and sort of tricking your brain into wanting to be happy. And hopefully, yeah, right. Curriculum and a book, all this stuff's coming along with it. And right, my ultimate goal is to help change the educational system and have this stuff taught in schools early on, to where they're starting to teach, these areas that have proven to make us happy. Again, these universal principles versus just the system that we've been in for so long. Okay, let's figure out how to, like, what job you're going to do. And then we're going to, and that's like basically all school is teaching you, what job you're going to go into. And there's so much more to life.
I mean, the life skills is basically super important, right? To be successful in anything. And I think people learn it. And my theory is that people learn it by making a whole bunch of mistakes, all their 20s and 30s. And eventually when you're in 40s, you're kind of in your midlife and you're trying to figure out what went wrong. And that's when you look for apps to kind of make yourself better. And eventually you can be better. But my thing is, why don't go as early as possible? Maybe in middle school, there might be a module around how to build good habits, which is different from high school and different from college. But I think kind of really building life skills and, being an effective human being is super important. And I think that's where things are falling up. Like, people are dropping out or mental health challenges and, some of this can be solved, but we leave it to the students to a large extent. And a lot of people are just lost, right? So creating an intentional program around it, could be a software, could be a book, could be a course. I mean, I see this to be a super important area for sure. I mean, we are, as a company for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and you hit the nail on the head in terms of, you got to start young, right? Because again, it's the law of compounding. I have this thing what I call the equation of life. And it's basically your belief system plus your repeated actions plus time equals who you will become. And so your belief system, meaning like your mindset, what the habits that you develop, like how you see the world, like the actions you're taking, that you're taking every day, right? Just basically like how you see each of these 5 cores. And then again, your belief system plus your repeat, and then you take action on those, and then just time, and then that's gonna turn you in who you want to be. And so the earlier you start, the better. And to start, because these habits, like I said earlier, they dig their claws in deep. Once they're formed, they're really hard to undo. Yeah. I always think of like a little tick. I had a tick when I was in camp many years ago, and I remember my counselor pulled it off, and it was like this huge, full of like my blood, kind of gross, but and it was really hard to get off. Like they dig in deep. And so a lot of people they give up, or they don't think that it's that important to change certain. I mean, the big ones are big, like, oh, I shouldn't smoke, but there's so many more little things that we're doing every day that are really compounding our happiness and stuff. So yeah, we should talk. Maybe when I finish, I can get my stuff on your platform.
Yeah, no, happy to chat. We work with now about 200 universities now. So, if you're building something, this is meaningful. I mean, there are ways probably I'm passionate about this as well.
Yeah, we'll talk offline for sure. I want to understand that more and understand some of that stuff. So, well, this is great. So we're going to kind of wrap things up, last 5 minutes or so here. I like to always end with talking about, your personal habits. Is there one habit that you have developed? Obviously you're a successful guy, you're doing great things. So somewhere along the line, there's a habit that you've developed that you feel like maybe it was a failure habit at one point, but you turned it into a success habit and it's helping you.
Well, there are quite a few things that would come to mind. Like one is that daily exercise. I used to be athletic, but I kind of lost it, and I kind of was not doing enough exercise. I do 30 minutes every morning for the last 3 years. I've seen that has a big impact on my mental health during the day. So if you have a stressful life, I would say the first thing I feel is half an hour doing any sort of exercise that is suitable is important, and that has helped me a lot. The other habit I've seen is being present. In the past, sometimes, I have these like bigger projects that I'm working on, and then the smaller things will get lost. But now I kind of focus on, okay, these are the things I'm going to spend my time and just be very present at every interaction. I mean, everything I do, that has helped me. It's kind of just to kind of focus and try to do my best at everything, as opposed to kind of worrying about things that are going on and things like that. And I kind of almost like compartmentalize my mind in various pieces. Like when I'm doing this, I'm just doing this. I'm not thinking about something else. And that has taken a while to kind of build that habit, but definitely has helped me a lot.
Okay, so I love that. This is exactly what I was telling you earlier that I'm trying to help people do. So now they've just heard a good habit that you have, but here the problem would be most people would hear that and have no idea how to then take that from A to Z, right? So what's B? What is the step that we can help people gamify? Like, is there a way that you gamify it to sort of remind yourself to have this habit? Is there something that you can kind of give people to go off and then it might trigger in them like, oh wow, yeah, I can do this to help me develop that habit?
So what I do that is specifically to focus, right? When I wake up, before I start to work anything, I create a list of things for the day that I want to focus on. And that decision is based on what is most important for me to cover that day. So commitments that I have, plus things that I want to solve for, my biggest problems that I want to focus on. Write it down. The other thing I try to do, not 100%, but is to block out calendar time. So if I'm doing something for 2 hours, I just block out 2 hours. I'm going to work on this presentation, but just for these 2 hours. And I have a goal in mind that in 2 hours, if I spend 2 hours, this is what I want to achieve in 2 hours.
Love it. I love that's actually, there's a principle involved in that. It's not the Pareto principle, that's the 80-20, but I'm drawing a blank. Maybe you know it, but it's when you actually, that is a habit hack. When you give yourself less time to do something, and I actually use this hack as well, you'll get it done. So it kind of, think about you're a college student, you've got a month to study for an exam. How many people do you think are just crushing it on day one and hitting the library hard, right? No, but how many people do you think, 3 days before that exam are going to be just cramming like a mofo? Same with New Year's resolutions, right? Like, oh, I have a whole year to do them. But then it's like comes to the end of the year and you're like, oh my God, I haven't done any of them. I'm going to go to the gym and really get in shape. And then, you're dying the next day because you overdid it. Right. But and then people's mind goes, oh, that was too difficult. Like, that was too much. I can't sustain that. Forget that habit. Right. And so I like that you give yourself you're making it easy. You're using one of these principles by giving yourself a specific amount of time to do something. And then your brain figures out a way to magically get it done. And I use my timer actually on my phone. So like what I'll do is if I have a meeting coming up, I set my alarm 20 minutes before the meeting, and my alarm goes off every 10 minutes to remind me. So I set it and I know I have 20 minutes to finish whatever task that I'm working on. And then at 10 minutes before, it goes off again. And it's amazing in that 20-minute span how much more productive I am. Whereas I know for a fact that if I'd had an hour to finish that project, I could have filled that time. 2 hours, 3 hours. But when I have 20 minutes, I'm like, okay, I need to get this done. And there's a lot to be said. I'm a perfectionist at heart. It's one of my failure habits. There's a lot to be said. There's a 70% rule that I heard a long time ago that I really always try to use. Just get stuff done 70%. Don't try to make things perfect, because life, again, it's all about growing, trying things out, seeing what's working, what's not working. And if you try to make everything perfect, you're going to spend way more time, and then chances are it's not going to be perfect, and it's not what other people want it, and you're like, oh, I should have done it this way. Whereas if you just kind of did it, got it out there to the world, seeing how people react, get people's opinions, feedback, then you can start kind of tweaking it a little bit. That's a big one as well.
Exactly. No, I love that. I mean, I think that's the principle of building any product, which is to get it out there as quickly as possible to get some feedback. The other concept that we're speaking is time slicing. I don't know if you've heard of that, which I find helpful when I'm in a stressful situation. Which is, the idea is that, if you have, like, let's say in a really difficult situation, don't plan for like hours or days. Like, say, okay, what can I do in the next 30 minutes to make this better? What can I do in the next 5 minutes to make this better? So that focusing on the most important thing in a very small amount of time. It only works when I'm in a stressful situation. Something has to be solved. Typically, when I hear that, okay, this is a big problem and it'll take me a week to think about it, it's like a problem, because then we don't know what to do for a week. It's about, okay, it's a big problem. What can I do in 5 minutes? That's going to make things slightly better. Then what can I do in half an hour to make it a little more better? What can I do in 1 hour? Slightly more better, and then in a week.
Yeah, I love it. It's kind of ties to that whole improving by 1%, right? Like, don't try to improve 100%. Just improve 1% better every single day. and everything you do, and it'll slowly, again, law of compounding will kick in. Well, dude, this is amazing. I want to talk to you more. I'll DM you after this. Are you available to chat for like 5 minutes after this about doing some collaboration stuff?
I mean, let me just take a look at my calendar real fast. I have another meeting coming up. Just want to. And sorry about kind of getting onto this IG Live. It took me a while to.
Oh, don't worry about it. It happens
Yeah,
all the time. It happens all the time. It's a little bit different format than most people are used to. So, well, thank you again so much for coming on. Yeah, we'll message after. We won't have to do it here. And try to connect. If it's not now, we can do it another time. But this was awesome. Again, and where can people check you out? Yellowdig.com, right? That's where your
Yellowdig.com or .co. Just look us up there if you want to learn more about the platform. If you want to give it a try. If you're teaching, if you're a teacher, I would love to kind of definitely reach out to us. And if you want to connect with me, LinkedIn is a good spot to find me. So if you just go to LinkedIn and search for Shaunak Roy, you'll find me there.
Yep, and we'll have your name in the show notes. Perfect. Awesome, man. Well, great chatting. I look forward to chatting some more. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Awesome. Yeah, great to meet you, Will.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
That's it for the Gamify Your Habits podcast with Will Moore. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to visit moremomentum.com to learn how you can gamify your life.